guys! Today in Kitchen Toys we got the Nick Jr. Dora's Favorite Fairy Tales. Today we got 3 magic oranges. In the olden days there lived a king who had a son. Since the king was getting old, he wanted his son to get married. He held a great fiesta, inviting all the beautiful, smart, and talented princesses from far and near. But the prince was in no hurry to find a wife. He found something wrong with each of the princesses at the fiesta. One was too tall, one was too short, one was too old, one was too young. One of them spoke so softly that the prince had trouble hearing her, and one spoke so loudly that she gave the prince a headache. The king was not happy. He ordered his son to go out and find a wife. "If you ever want to wear a crown on your head, you will not return without a bride." The prince found a fine horse and rode out to the world alone in search for a wife. He soon came to the green forest. At the edge he saw an orange tree with 3 golden oranges. Wow, look.
Yeah, and birds and Dora are looking at one too.
The prince plucked the magnificent looking fruits and continued to ride. He rode on and on and on. The sun beat down in the cloudless sky. The prince grew terribly thirsty, but there was not a stream or a spring in sight. Then he remembered the oranges. He pulled one from his pocket and held it up. It was so bright and golden. He imagined it to be full of sweet juice. His mouth watered and his lips cooled just thinking about the refreshing taste. The prince hopped off his horse, sat down, and cut the orange in half. As soon as the prince cut open the orange, a beautiful maiden appeared before him. She had eyes as blue as the sky and hair as golden as the sun. She begged him for a drink of water. "At the very least, a drop," she said. "I cannot give you what I do not have," the prince said sadly. As quickly as she had appeared, the beautiful maiden vanished. The prince stared into the place where she had been standing. Stroking his chin, he said to himself, "Well, now I know what sort of oranges these are. I'll be careful when I open them." He ate the orange quickly. He had never tasted anything so sweet and delicious. When he was done, he even licked his fingers. Feeling refreshed, the prince continued on his way. However, it did not take long before his mouth became dry again. He was soon thirsty. Since there was no water in sight, his thirst was stronger than good sense. The prince pulled the second orange from his pocket. When he cut it, the same thing happened all over again. But this time the maiden's eyes were green like a pool of water, and her hair was flaming red like a hibiscus flower. "Please, can I have some water?" she begged, "even just a drop." Hearing what the prince had none to offer, she vanished. "Well," he said, "I still have 1 orange. I will not cut it open until I have some water handy." The prince ate the second orange, continued on his way. Soon after he heard a faint rippling noise. He galloped toward the sound and was pleased to find a lively spring with water as clear as air itself. Jumping off his horse, the prince ran to the spring and drank deeply. Once he was refreshed, he sat down to rest on the grassy bank nearby. Then he felt for his 3rd orange. Why, this very place to open it, he realized. He did so in an instant. Appeared before him a maiden. Her eyes and her long flowing hair were as black as raven's wings, and her face was soft and white like a jasmine flower. She was so beautiful, the prince momentarily stunned. Like the others, the maiden asked for water, and not losing 1 second, the prince scooped up some water in the hollow of his hands and raised it to her lips. The maiden did not vanish like the others. Rather, she drank the water. The prince could not help noticing that the maiden was neither too tall nor too short. She was not too old or too young. Her voice was neither too loud nor too soft. In fact, it was music to his ears. She was so beautiful and charming, the prince instantly fell in love. He knelt down on one knee and asked the lovely maiden to become his wife. "Yes," she said. "Thank you for breaking this cruel curse. You have no idea what it's like being stuck in an orange for years and years." "It must have been horrible," said the prince. "You know," she said, "I was once a king's daughter, but an evil witch cast a spell on me and imprisoned me in a magic orange. Only a king's son could break the spell. You are that son, and I am set free." Full of joy, the prince and princess got on the prince's horse, and together they rode home to the royal palace. Once they neared the royal palace, they were followed by many cheering people who flew flowers joyously into the air. Upon hearing the excitement, the king and the court came running outside when they met the prince. "Father, here is the maiden of choice," the prince shouted happily. The marriage was celebrated with a grand fiesta. Everyone danced and sang and ate and laughed. They had a wonderful time, especially the king, whose wish to see his daughter-in-law had finally come true. Things were quite wonderful. When they grew older, the prince and princess became the king and queen. They wore golden crowns on their heads. But to say they had lived happily ever would be to end this story too short. Oh no. Before long, news of the king and queen reached the witch who imprisoned the princess inside the magic orange. When the witch found out the princess was not only free but now a queen, she was very upset. Disguising herself as a poor old woman with a basket full of fruits and fancy pins, she started for the royal palace. When she arrived, she walked up and down the steps shouting, "Fruit, fruit! I have sweet oranges, bananas, and lemons. Pins, pins, please buy my pins." Hearing her cries, the queen came to the castle door. The queen did not realize the old woman was really a witch. "Come closer so I can see some pins," said the queen. The witch walked to the door as quickly as her mean old shriveled legs would carry her. "Here, queen," she said, picking out a hairpin with a shiny white pearl. "This will look fine by your golden crown. Do try it on." The queen politely bowed down. The witch placed the pin into her hair. In a flash, the lovely queen was turned into a little white dove. Startled, she flew through the open door and vanished into the green forest. "Ha, ha, ha, ha," said the witch. Since her work was done, she returned home deep in the woods. Now, all this had happened while the young king was out hunting in the forest. He prepared his bow and arrow, looked and saw a little white dove in the treetop. The king thought the dove was so beautiful, he immediately wished to capture it as a present for his wife. He turned and pointed his arrow. It brushed one of his dove's white wings, making her lose perch and flutter to the ground. He picked her up gently and returned to the castle. Once there, the king placed the dove in a golden cage, carried it to the queen's chamber. But the queen could not be found. "My queen is missing," shouted the king. The whole court began to buzz. Up and down everyone searched, but the queen seemed to have vanished from the earth. Everyone was very sad, especially the king. Day and night he mourned the loss of his wonderful queen. No one could find a way to comfort him. Aww. 2 years went by so swiftly as the wind. One day, when the unhappy king decided he needed to be alone, he went to the garden and noticed the beautiful little dove. She had lived in the garden since the queen disappeared. The queen opened the cage of the door and peered inside. The dove blinked back at him. She was so beautiful. She reminded the king of his wife. Gently the king ran his fingers over the bird's head. As he did, he felt the pearl. Brushing the feathers, he discovered the magic hairpin. How strange, the king thought. Why would a bird have such a pin? Carefully he pulled the pin from the bird's feathers. As soon as he did, the dove vanished, and there before him stood the queen. She was as ever lovely and kind as ever. The king fell to his knees in astonishment. The queen told her husband all about the wicked witch. Immediately the king ordered the men to find the witch and bring her to the royal palace so she could be punished. But there was no need. When the witch's spell was broken for the second time, she lost all of her power and became just a lonely old woman who lived in the woods. From that day forward, the king and his lovely queen truly did live happily ever after. Thanks for reading with us today, guys, on Kids Dream Toys.